So the Supra, as you guys saw in the last video, started acting up. We ended up pulling the alternator while the car's on the dyno, which is not exactly fun here. So as you can see, the alternator's been removed. The thing.
All right, we got the new alternator in, so. This one actually seems to be working way better anyway. Before you'd start the car up and the e-brake light, the large triangle logo there, would just be dim. But now it's actually like the normal brightness. So I'll let it come up to temp, let the fans come on, and then we'll check it again. All right, so I got the leads backwards, which is why it's showing a negative number. There you go. So 14 volts there, seems like it's good. All right, looks like we're in business. The AC compressor is locked up. So we got the new alternator in, started the car up, and then it was running for a while, and suddenly it was making this noise, and I actually thought it was power steering. So I went to go check the power steering fluid, and it was completely full, so I just assumed that it was a bad power steering pump. And then the car just randomly stalled, and I couldn't figure out why. Went back in, starts right up, no problems. And then I was sitting there looking at the fuel table, and all of a sudden, you could see that the engine load was high up. So it was like something was dragging it down, and then suddenly it just started smoking. I could smell it, so I shut the car off, and that's when we found it. So now it's cooled down for a while. I'm gonna reach in here and grab the clutch, and then we're just gonna rotate it. And it's real rough. Oh, and it's like stuck here. So we definitely got a bad AC compressor. Oh man, that's real bad. Ugh. All right, well, so there's that. Another reason why this car just doesn't want to leave. All right, so we can't do the AC compressor on the car while it's on the dyno. So unfortunately, I wasted all this time strapping it down for nothing. So we're finally getting back on the Supra here. As you guys saw, the AC compressor locked up and the customer brought his own. I sourced out a couple of different ones and they were just too expensive. He said he found one on Amazon that's got a 4-year warranty or something like that. It's this guy right here. So Pops is pulling out the AC compressor and we'll swap it out and hopefully we'll be good. The really suck part about all this is the weather's gotten really cold and wet again. So this Supra may just go on the dyno and just sit there for a little bit, but at this point I'd much rather just do it on the street just to make sure that everything is good before having to load it back up on the dyno and strapping it down. So in order to get the alternator out, we basically had to take the power steering pump completely loose and then had to rotate it to get it completely out of the way. And the one interior bolt on the alternator on the AC compressor was like super hard to get to, so putting it back in is going to be a complete pain in the ass, but ultimately it did come out. We having problems as usual, right? No surprise now. So the next thing that we're actually having an issue with, believe it or not, is actually engine noise. So I was doing some data logging and it started picking up like a ton of noise. So we're going to do a couple things. First thing I want to talk about is the LS2 coils. So the LS2 coils, you know, like in the mid 2010s or whatever, there was like a pretty common upgrade. We've learned now that, you know, they're not exactly perfect, obviously. And so the biggest thing on these is that they're actually not supposed to be coil on plug. So they usually have a spark plug wire and sometimes you can get a ton of noise. Now that's one. The second thing is that when you get noise, it's because something is routed too close to something else. And looking at this ground, you can see, I don't know if you guys can already see it, but this ground is wrapped and it's draping over the ignition coils. So we're going to move this to a different location, one. Secondly, I'm gonna pull all these coils out and we're gonna wrap the boot and some Scotch 33. And hopefully we get lucky and it eliminates the noise. So I don't know if it will or not, but fingers crossed that it will. Okay, so I've removed the ground cable completely. It was attached to this valve cover bolt here, and then actually to this coil itself, and then here. So this is where the factory ground goes, but it's wrapped all around this. So I'm pretty sure that's actually the problem. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna try to relocate this ground, and then we're just gonna bolt it onto these parts of the head here. And hopefully that fixes our issue. I'm going to see what we can do about routing it a couple different ways, because it's as you can see, it's a singular ground strap with ends on it. And I guess we could really, since the battery's been relocated here, I mean, we could really actually give it the absolute best ground, which is going to be off the battery. But the question is like, I don't know if we have enough length to fit everything, but this obviously would be the best part. You really want to ground it to the block, but again, I just don't know if there's enough space to do all that here. So I'm gonna play around with a couple different combos and grounds, or grounding locations rather, and then we're just gonna see what works best. But with the coil, or with the grounds routed intertwined to the coil wiring, that's probably our problem there. And so that was my fault for not giving a quick look over. So I think I found the ideal location here. There's a spot on the head right here for like I think the engine service hook thing goes here. And then right off the water pump as well, there's a 10 mil bolt here. And with this spot, this is like a 14 millimeter, or let me move the camera here. So with this spot, it's a 14 millimeter. The problem is that this is not the right bolt for it. It's the right thread, but obviously it's not what we're using. And the hole is just a hair too small. So I'm gonna go ahead and drill this out really quick, and hopefully that should get us situated. It's so funny because growing up, I used to listen to my dad complain about how hard it was to find bolts. Now as an adult, I totally understand what he means. To find the right thread pitch, the right shoulder, everything. So that's what I struggled with here. I found a couple bolts that were the right thread, but it would have the wrong shoulder, or and that's primarily what I was running across, but I ended up finding one, so go me. As you can see here, that the 10 mil bolt on the water pump went here, and I moved the ground directly to the battery. So hopefully everything's going to go well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to fire it up and give it a couple revs. The thing about this was that it would lose, the computer would lock up like under driving conditions, like into boost or hitting the launch control. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm gonna pop open the bay here, back the car out a little bit, let it warm up, and then once it warms up, we'll go ahead and try to hit the two-step and see what happens. Supra obviously is started and running, so we're just gonna let it hang out for a little bit once it comes to op temp, and then we'll go ahead and we'll hit the limiter a couple times. But I mean, it started up totally normal, like it always does, so nothing too crazy there. All right, so car's warmed up. And as you can see, it's still locked up. So you can see. Yep. So there's some type of electrical noise going on here, obviously. I was hoping it was just the ground, but apparently it is not. So I'm going to try other things here. We can add a couple of grounds. We can check over the spark plugs themselves.
or we can try to move the coils from out of the valley onto some wires and move them aside and see. As you see, it's locking up pretty good here. So I have to unplug it to get it to read again. Okay, so I moved some grounds around in the engine bay. I actually added another ground, and we're going to let it come up to op temp again, and then we're going to test it and see what happens. As you guys can see, I have the coils removed again. I went to check the spark plugs just to see if they were resistor plugs. And what I actually ended up finding were all these plugs are loose. So check this out. So these front three I've already tightened. Here's the back one. I haven't touched this one at all, with the exception of obviously removing the coil. So we'll see if these are loose. See? So let's check these last two really quick here. This one's tight. Let's see. Number 6 is actually a little loose. One was like extremely loose though. So, okay, so they're all tightened up. And I'm gonna reinstall these. I'm actually thinking about just dropping the coils onto the plugs without installing the spacer and the bracket, just to test it out really quick, because lining up the spacers is a little bit of a bear. Another thing that I've noticed is that there is some type of oil seepage on these, and I don't know how. The valley itself is a little on the wet side, but nothing crazy. So I'm just, like I said, I think I'm just gonna toss these guys in just so I can test it really quick without having to put it all the way in, because like I said, the little spacers that they give you it's kind of a pain to line up. So hopefully this is going to fix the problem, but knowing my luck recently, I do know for a fact that it's probably not going to be the case. But when it comes down to troubleshooting, sometimes you just gotta throw a bunch of stuff at it and see what sticks. So here's the LS2 coil harness for the Supra. I've wrapped it up in RF tape. Hopefully that this will cure our noise problem. I've never actually dealt with this stuff before, so this is all very new to me. So I actually had to cut it into strips, and what I wasn't sure of is that if I cut it into strips, if it would actually have continuity. And surprisingly it does. So this main section is one piece, and then this secondary section is another, and then these individual ends are all separate. So what I ended up doing was I put my ohm meter on this end and this end and check the continuity, and it actually does it. It does have continuity. I went ahead and checked the ohms, and the ohms are actually really low as well. So I'm pretty surprised that it all does in fact work. So I think the noise is actually coming from here, from just what I was reading online, that some other people have the same issues with these coils. It's really weird because I've used these coils quite a bit over the years and haven't had a problem until this one. So I got this all wrapped up. I'm going to try to see if this is going to work. I'm going to wrap it up a little bit more just to make it a little bit tighter, and then we're going to reinstall this, and hopefully this fixes our problem.